Hello, everyone, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and I hope that I am finding everybody doing just fine in the world, wherever it may be that you are listening to this show. We are on the doorstep of the third Marvel film to come out in 2025. Yes, we've had three. Three Marvel movies to come out this year. And for better or worse, the first two to come out this year, Captain America Brave New World and Thunderbolts, have been kind of divided. Captain America didn't do anything, at least for me. And it wasn't a big blockbuster at the movie theater either, but it just did nothing for me. That was probably one of the worst Marvel movies in my humble opinion. And then we get to Thunderbolts, which came out in May. I actually enjoyed Thunderbolts. I thought Thunderbolts was one of the better Phase 5 films that they've put out since Endgame. It's up there with Shang-Chi and Deadpool and Wolverine, but it didn't blow the doors off of the movie theater. But I thought it was really, really good, and it was a step in the right direction. And Marvel decided to release three films this year for a number of reasons. I don't think this was the initial plan. Captain America was supposed to come out like 2 years ago, but with reshoots and rewrites and the writer's strike and the actor's strike and COVID and all this other stuff really affected their release plan since the pandemic, to be quite honest with you. And we're getting the Fantastic Four First Steps, which comes out July the 25th. I am excited for this. I tried not to be. This was the first time in a long time that I actually fought hard to temper my expectations. I think it worked because I'm not like over the moon excited as I would be for these films, but I'm still highly anticipated. I'm still zeroed in on this film because I am super, super interested to see how they're going to do this version of the film. How will this differ from the last Fantastic Four films that we've gotten over the past 20 years from 20th Century Fox? And will this be an upgrade? Can you upgrade this franchise? Can you do something different? Well, going by the trailers, going by the promotional material, it definitely is going to be different, being as though this is set in this parallel universe, I guess you could say, 1960s retro futuristic type deal. Is not in our universe, and I put "our" in heavy quotations because the rest of the Marvel universe isn't our universe technically, but you get where I'm going with it. It's different, and this is basically the era that Fantastic Four came to prominence, in the 1960s, and their popularity was at its peak, I would say. But I'm a big fan of the Fantastic Four as characters because, as a comic book nerd growing up, and still is, who am I kidding? I really was intrigued by this group because this is the first family. This is Marvel's first family. Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and Ben Grimm, the Thing. These are some interesting characters in how they interact with one another. They are truly a family, and that's what made this property such a interesting and exciting group. Because Mr. Fantastic is this super genius, the smartest man on earth, basically, and he can scratch. You have Sue Storm, who can turn invisible and make force fields. The Human Torch is a fireball that flies, you know, and the thing is just that, a thing. It's just a giant rock monster who can go toe to toe with the Hulk for a little while until the Hulk gets angry, and that's a wrap. The fight's over. But this is a film that Marvel Studios really needs to knock out of the park. This can't be a base hit. It can't even be a double in baseball terms. This has to be a home run, and for a number of reasons. Number one, Marvel is, they are basically backed into a corner here. They are reeling right now. They're not hitting. Even the movies that are good aren't doing good at the box office. Now, full disclosure, that's across the board anyway. A lot of people aren't going to the theaters like they used to, you know. Uh, Thunderbolt struggled at the box office. Superman, as good as it is, in my opinion, is doing decent at the box office, but is not doing great at the box office. You know, sticking back with Marvel, I mentioned before, Captain America didn't do great at the box office. Deadpool and Wolverine did amazing. I think it made $1 billion at the box office. But what brought people to the theaters, it wasn't because it was Marvel. It was because of Hugh Jackman. It was because of Wolverine and his popularity, and Deadpool. A lot of people like Deadpool. I like Deadpool, but in the films, I liked them in the first film, and it kind of diminished after that. But that's besides the point. It was more of a nostalgia thing, you know, because they brought in X-Men, they brought in characters from the Fox Marvel universe in that film to kind of give them a proper goodbye. Blade showed up in that. Wesley Snipes as Blade showed up. So it was a more of a goodbye to 20th Century Fox Marvel division. And so that's why that movie did what it did. Their TV shows, the Disney Plus shows for Marvel, have not been hitting. You know, Ironheart, it got a lot of good reviews. Me personally, I thought it could have been better. It started off weak. It ended a little better with the final 3 episodes, but it wasn't enough for me to say, okay, we're good, you know, with this character moving forward. Daredevil was decent. It was really good. It was good. I say decent, but it was really good. It stayed on par with the Netflix version of that show. And so I wasn't mad at that. But everything else has been a struggle and a half. Agatha all along was a struggle. I mean, going back to Secret Invasion was horrible. You know, there've been a lot of misses for Marvel. And I say all that to say this. They need this. They need this to be a hit, money wise. This needs to be a blockbuster for Marvel, because after this, there's nothing else until we get to Avengers Doomsday, and this is the big finale of this saga, of the multiverse saga. You know, and not only that, another kind of a monkey wrench that was thrown into Marvel's plans was the Jonathan Majors of it all, you know, the Kane the Conqueror deal. And that just threw everything off. So they are in desperate need of a hit. The second thing, it's Fantastic Four. You know, which we're gonna go over the previous Fantastic Four films. And none of those movies are good. None of them. Some are worse than others, but none of them were good. So we are in a state right now. Do we want to take a chance on Fantastic Four? You know, we've been burnt 3 times in the past. I'm not counting the very first one that came out because nobody saw that. It was unreleased. And so just considering the 2 from director Tim Story and that Joshua Trank version, those were 3 horrible comic book. So are audiences willing to give this property a chance? That's the big question. Will the inclusion of Pedro Pascal, who is just money at this point, he's the go-to in Hollywood. I don't care if it's The Last of Us, it's Mandalorian, whatever it may be. Pedro Pascal is a shot of adrenaline for any project that he's involved with. Will that be enough to draw him to the theater? Will Vanessa Kirby as the Invisible Woman, Joshua Quinn, uh, you know, will the popularity of him being a part of Stranger Things carry over with him? Edmund Moss Batrack from The Bear, will that carry over with him being a part of this film? Not to mention, and I heard this when I went to go see, oh, what was the movie? I think it was Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. We was in the theater, and the trailers were playing, and they played the trailer for the Fantastic Four First Steps. And the dude sitting on my row, he was about a couple of seats over, and I guess he's a nerd as well. He well, he couldn't have been too good of a nerd. He leans over and whispers to me when Silver Surfer popped up on screen. He was like, "Oh man, I'm not gonna like this movie. They changed Silver Surfer, and I don't talk during the movie, and I don't talk during the credits either. But I felt the need, felt the need to entertain this gentleman, and I said, "What you mean they changed?" Like, Silver Surfer's a man. I said, "Well, there is a female Silver Surfer as well." No, Silver Surfer's a man. I read the comics, and at that point I shut up. Because I could see that he was going to a whole nother realm with it. I'm like, man, give the movie a chance. Who cares? Even if Shia LaBeouf, which is the name of the character, is not a part of the comics canon, who cares? Who cares? Who's to say that Norman Rad doesn't show up in this film? We don't know. Maybe they're saving him for later Fantastic Four films, or maybe a film of his own. Who knows? But in his mind, the movie's gonna be horrible because of that. So there you go. That's one person that Marvel Studios needs to work on. You have Galactus in this film. I've seen people online complain about Galactus. How is he walking around in New York City? He's bigger than a planet, and all this here. And this is not being in the know or knowing about the character in the comics. He can shrink down the size. He can grow to size. He's Galactus. And we're arguing about the logic of a comic book character, which is also insane to me. But that's neither here nor there. We'll get to that in a couple of days when the Fantastic Four First steps into theaters. But in honor of this film's release, we're going to go back in time. We're going to travel back. We're going to travel back to the year 2005. And you can't imagine the excitement that was flowing through my veins as I saw the first trailer for Fantastic Four. We were right there on the precipice of the comic book movie renaissance. We weren't quite at the MCU birth yet. MCU came around, 3 years later with Iron Man. But we were starting to rev up our engines with comic book movies. People were starting to get excited. We have got Spider-Man 2 at this point. We've got countless X-Men movies up to this point. It was getting better. I think we had got Batman Begins. We had superhero shows on television. It was just a lot going on with the comic book live action versions around this era, and things were looking up, because before this, if you were lucky to get one comic book movie a year, lucky, because we didn't get that. It was like if every blue moon, maybe once every 5 years, you get a comic book movie. But we were starting to get conditioned to the point where we are now, where we have like 3 Marvel movies this year. We have a Superman movie to come out this year. We have countless other TV shows based on comic book characters coming out just this year. And man, you put 2025, and we're just over the halfway point of this year. We've gotten more superhero content in 2025 up to this date than we did from 1990 to 2005 combined. And so this is madness what we're going through right now. We are spoiled beyond belief in this day and age. But in 2005, they took a swing. They took a big swing here, they being 20th Century Fox. Seeing the success of X-Men and X2, X-Men United, and seeing the success of Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, they decided, you know what? Let's get us another team, superhero team movie, Let's do the Fantastic Four. And they hired Chris Columbus. And at the time, that was genius. Chris Columbus, who is known for family films, Home Alone and Mrs. Doubtfire and things of that ilk. He can do it. If anybody could have done it, it was him. Well, that fell through. He didn't get the opportunity to direct this film, but he did stay on as a producer. I think he was the executive producer of this film at the end of the day, because a lot of his ideas was incorporated in the finished product. So he did get a credit for that. But they end up selling for that. And I say selling, but whatever. I was excited at the time because I was like, all right, a young black director directing a superhero film in Fantastic Four, nonetheless. This is like Marvel's crown jewel, the property that they put in the hands of this young black director, Tim Story. And up to this point, Tim Story didn't run afoul with me, he's run afoul with me as of late. Can't stand his films, The Shaft film that he directed was one of the worst films I ever watched. This new Eddie Murphy film that's coming out on Prime Video in a couple of months, not excited about it at all. I'm excited about every Eddie Murphy movie, even if it's bad. But I'm not excited for this because Tim Story directed it. But in 2005, I was super excited. He had directed Ride Along. He directed Barbershop, and I loved Barbershop. Still love Barbershop. And so I was interested to see his take on this property. Now, he is a self-professed comic book nerd. He loved the Fantastic Four comics. So he had an idea of how to make this work. Now, before I jump into this review, I want to let you know I'm reviewing this as if I'm watching it for the first time in 2005. I'm not revisiting with my mindset that I have now. So just travel back with me 20 years as we jump back into Fantastic Four, directed by Tim Story. This stars Ian Goodford, Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, Michael Chiklis, and the recently deceased Julian McMahon. And just want to shout out Julian McMahon, who played Victor Von Doom, Dr. Doom, in these 2 films. He passed away last week before last, from cancer. And so our thoughts and prayers go out to his family. But this film follows the origins of the Fantastic Four as they learn to come to terms with their newfound abilities following the exposure of cosmic rays. This is a bona fide early 2000s film. And I say that in the sense that this movie is kind of hampered by the fact that we weren't there digitally yet. You know, we didn't have the visual effects that we have now. And so a lot of the visual effects are dated, super dated in this film. But like I said, not going to judge it off of 2025 vision. I'm going to judge it off of 2005. It was decent, especially the visual effects with the Human Torch. I liked it. I still like it because it didn't look like it upgraded much going by the trailers in the new Fantastic Four film that's coming out. It looks virtually the same how they have them, and that's fine. I mean, what can you do different? A man on fire flying. There's not much difference you could do, but it was great. What wasn't great was the stretching from Mr. Fantastic. The stretching was horrible. I mean, it looked so bad. It looked. I don't even know if I can describe it accurately. It is the worst looking visual effects you ever want to see. And this is me saying this in 2005. Now, when I rewatched it, and I rewatched all these films with my daughter. She wanted to watch them a few months back, and I ended up watching those two because she didn't see the first two. She had saw half of the other one that we're gonna go through, the last attempt, and she wanted to watch the other one. So we watched that, and actually all three. But that's besides the point. And when I rewatched it, I was like, man, this is so bad. The visual effects are so bad. But I do remember being satisfied with it in 2005. I was like, okay, you know, you accept things when you know they couldn't do any better back then. But now when you look at it, you're like, oh, I think they could have did better. I really do. This wasn't good. These were not good visual effects, even for 2025 standards. But I accepted it for what it was. What I didn't accept was the fact that this was a boring movie. This movie was so boring. They had basically had the Thing fighting a fire truck. That was pretty much the big action set piece in this movie. You know, the sequence on the bridge when everything went haywire. You had Sue Storm turn invisible, and in the film, you know, she turns invisible, but not her clothes. And so she had to get naked in order to turn invisible. And you don't see nothing. It's PG-13. But it was it was so silly. And she turned invisible to get through the crowd of people to get to Ben. And she had Reed and Johnny take her clothes to meet her up there once she gets through the crowd. Well, what was the point of her being invisible? Because Reed and Johnny got through the crowd no problem. Matter of fact, they beat her to the front of the crowd and met her with her clothes. It made zero sense whatsoever. It was just a moment to show that she had powers. And the same thing with Reed Richards. He used his stretchy powers to catch a fireman from not jumping, but falling off the bridge, and it was just a silly sequence. And that was the big action set piece of the film. The final climax with Doctor Doom was just, it felt like it was thrown in just to say we had a Act 3 climactic battle. And that's what it was. They just threw that in. Nothing was written on page. Okay, let's do this. All right, let's shoot water at him. But Reed Richards, I need him to curve like a water slide so the water can go through. Completely ridiculous. Anyways, all that was bad. There was no action in this movie. The only thing that really worked flawlessly was Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. And this was the reason I was doubting him playing Captain America, because they are two polar opposites of each other. Those two characters. I'm like, man, there's no way Chris Evans can play Captain America. As silly and uh, uh, boyish that he just played in the Fantastic Four, I don't see him pulling it off. My guy, was I wrong? He pulled it off flawlessly. Thank God for redemption. He was able to redeem himself as Captain America. But with it, saying all that, he was the best part of the movie. He was the best part of both of them. Well, this movie. We'll get to the next one in a couple of minutes. But he was the best part of this movie because he was the only one that understood the assignment. He was the only one that knew what type of movie he was in. Michael Chiklis knew what type of movie he was in, who played Ben Grimm, the Thing. He knew what type of movie he was in also, but he's hampered by being in this rubber suit. And I remember discussing with a friend of mine around the time of this release, who he passed away a few years back. R.I.P. to my dog. He his big flaw, and this before the movie came out, he was like, "Man, they got him in a suit. I didn't want, I'm like, well, there's no way they're gonna, you know, digitally do him." And he was like, "Well, they did it for the Hulk because we had just got a Hulk movie, what, a couple of years before this. Ang Lee's Hulk, not the Incredible Hulk with uh, uh, Edward Norton, the Ang Lee's Hulk with Eric Bana. And yeah, they digitally did him, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I get it because the Thing is huge, and when you see him in First Steps in the promotion leading up to Fantastic Four First Steps, okay, I get it. But once again, that was 20 years ago. I don't think the technology would have worked. The Thing would have came off looking cartoonish. My God, look what they did with Mr. Fantastic. He didn't work. His stretching powers did not work digitally. So I don't think they could have did a full CGI character like that. But I get his complaint. But if you were going to do a suit, at least make the suit look like a rock. It did not look rock. He looked like he was in a rubber suit. And that's how it came out on the big screen. That's how it looks on the small screen. It does not look good. And so, unfortunately, that kind of hurts Michael Chiklis' portrayal as Ben Grimm. Even though I liked his performance, it wasn't his performance. It was just the suit. I just couldn't get past it, and still can't get past it. Jessica Alba was horribly miscast. Horribly miscast in this role. I don't think Jessica Alba is a bad actress by no stretch of the imagination. I just think she's in some bad movies, man. She's just she just be in some bad movies. She was in a movie about a year or so ago that was on Netflix, Triggered. That movie was so bad, and she was so bad in it. I was like, oh my God, I thought she was retired. She needs to stay retired. That's how bad it was. But I love Jessica Alba. I've seen her in good things. She's been good. That's why it was mind-boggling. But I always felt she was miscast for this role. Ian Goffard as Reed Richards. I didn't know anything about him before. Don't know nothing about him now. Last thing I seen him in was in the Bad Boys sequel that just came out. He was the bad guy in that. He was great in that. He was really good in that, but not in. He just did not radiate Reed Richards to me, and I don't know if it's because of the way that character was written, he was directed, or whatever the case may be. It never fully worked for me because Reed Richards is supposed to be a genius, and they have him. He's smart and all. That's all good, but he was just dorky. He was lame. It was nothing about him that radiate confidence and have this sense of leadership. This is the same character that is the leader of the Illuminati in Marvel Comics. There's no way that this portrayal of the character could lead the Illuminati. No way. And so it never worked for me in that aspect. Uh, Julian McMahon as Doctor Doom. I, I became a fan of Julian McMahon from Nip Tuck. I love Nip Tuck. Me and my wife watched that religiously. And so when he was cast as Doctor Doom, I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah, that'll work. They gave this dude nothing to work with, bro. It was like, okay, just play a mustache twirling villain. No plot, no substance, no nothing. His whole motivation, he didn't like Reed Richards. That was his whole motivation in the whole film. It was nothing else about him. There was no meat on that bone. Not even fat. It was nothing on that bone. They did him no favors in this film. But for some strange reason, I finally remember actually being entertained by this movie in in 2005. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I don't hate it now, in comparisons to other films that we might talk about today. But this was not a good movie. it, it was a mixture of subpar acting and bland storytelling. That's basically what this movie was. But like I said, it was entertaining for the time. It's nothing that you can go back and revisit as being okay, a cult classic. Never, never. Fantastic Four from 2005 gets a letter grade of a C minus. Yeah, I'm shocked it got that high, but it is not a it's not a movie that I would ever go back to revisit again. The only reason I watched it again a month or so ago was because my daughter asked me. But God forbid if she asks me again, it'll never happen. It's not going to happen. But believe it or not, the movie was successful. The movie made money. It made $333 million worldwide off of a $87 million budget. Well, some reports I read, it said 87 to 100. So I don't know what the right number was. I find it hard to believe that this movie was made for $100, but I'm $100. Well, yeah, it did feel like $100, but $100 million. But whatever the case may be, it was successful enough to warrant a sequel. And up to this point, until Ryan Coogler came along with Black Panther, which grossed over $1 billion, Tim Story held the record for an African American director with the highest grossing superhero film. And so that was something to celebrate. I was happy for him on that regard, but not the quality. But hey, maybe he'll get it better the second go around. Maybe he learned from the mistakes that he made in the first film and do it better in the second film. Well, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer came out in 2007. Once again, Tim Story returns to direct this film. The main cast returned, including Julian McMahon as Dr. Doom. Additionally to this cast, you have Andre Braugher, Doug Jones, and Lawrence Fishburne, both playing Silver Surfer in this film, one doing the physical work while the other did the voice. I'll let you determine who was who. The plot of this sequel, the Fantastic Four are confronted by the Silver Surfer to save the Earth from Galactus. And this sounds familiar. Like, didn't you just say that about the Fantastic Four First Steps? Yeah. But this is clearly different. I'm gonna tell you this, and I know I'm going out on a limb. I'm making a pretty bold statement here, but I'm willing to stand on it. I'm willing to put my head on the chopping block with this. The trailer for the Fantastic Four First Steps is 10 times better than Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer whole movie. This movie was so dumb. It made no sense whatsoever. This movie made no sense at all. Let's start off with the elephant in the room here. Let's start off with the fact that Galactus, who is the villain of this film, we don't see him at all. There is no visual representation of that character in this film other than the fact it's a cloud in space. There's no nothing. There's nothing. No word, no dialogue, no nothing. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, this is the one character you couldn't flub up, and they found the way to do it. It made no sense. Now, I remember around this time, there were reports that the reason they didn't reveal him in the movie is because they were going to do a Silver Surfer movie on his own, a spinoff of sorts, and Galactus was going to be in it, and they had another director that was going to do it, so they didn't want to impede on another director's vision. Okay, I can understand what they're saying there, but directors take over franchises all the time. They do different whatever iterations of characters all the time. You look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. They all had different directors. There's a different director for every movie. That doesn't change the landscape of that character or the dimensions of that character. Your logic made no sense, because if that was the case, you wouldn't have did that with Silver Surfer. You would have hid Silver Surfer. And now there are no way you can kind of change Silver Surfer. He's a silver guy that rides a silver surfboard. So there's not much you can change there. There's nothing you can change with Galactus either. He's the same as he is in every version that he pops up in the comics. I don't understand why they chose to go that route, but whatever. Let's act like that didn't happen. So is the movie good? It still isn't good, because you had your actors from the previous film, whether it's Ian Goldford or Jessica Alba or Michael Chiklis and Chris Evans. They were completely different from what they were in the first film. And I'm not saying it was wrong because the characters grew. They're in a different space than they were in the first film, story-wise. No, they were just different. It was like their attitudes changed, their composition changed. For example, Chris Evans. Chris Evans was jokey in the first film. That's cool. Johnny Storm is a hothead. He's a prankster. He's a jokester. He's all that stuff. So I can live with that. But they just made him downright silly in this movie for no reason at all. Just silly for silly's sake. And I think one of the reasons was this movie did make a change in its rating. The first film was PG-13. And I don't know why. It could have been PG. But this film was PG. And that's rare. That's rare these days. I don't remember a movie outside of Pixar or a Disney animated film, which I've seen some of them be PG-13. I can't think of a live action movie off the top of my head over the past 20, 30 years that has been PG. This is the first one and the only one. It was true PG. I think the only reason it wasn't G because you did see Sue Storm get, I guess you could say, die in this movie by being impaled. And you didn't see it. You know, it was blood coming out of her nose. I think that was the only thing. That's the only reason it was PG. Otherwise, it could have been G. This was so kiddie. And I think they were trying to appeal to the young, super young toddler audience here. And they failed miserably. Why did they pick a movie or a story that involves a planet-eating alien that devours planets, kills billions of people, and for their PG project? Why did they pick the story where Johnny is trying to find love and hopping out of showers and got his chest out and all this here in front of women? Why did he pick that to be your PG movies? I don't know, but this movie was not good at all. This was worse than the first one. There's absolutely nothing about this movie I remember, and I just rewatched it. This is the most forgettable of all of them. Now, the next one we're going to talk about, I remember everything about it, and not for a good reason. But Rise of the Silver Surfer was just a miss, man. I mean, you have an excellent character in Silver Surfer if you followed him in the comics. It's so much story to tell there. So much story to tell there between the Fantastic Four and Silver Surfer, and Galactus and Silver Surfer. And there was so much there to play with. And they chose this, bringing back Doctor Doom after we all saw him die at the end of the first one. Spoilers, but it made no sense to me. I don't know if it was a contractually obligation type deal that they had to bring him back for the film, or the fact that he was one of the best things from the last film that you had to bring him back. I don't know what the reason was, but it made no sense. It made absolutely no sense. And I thought that Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer at that time was the worst comic book movie I've ever seen. But we're about to dive into that one. But Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer from 2007 gets a letter grade of a D plus. Yeah, it is embarrassingly bad. The scene with Reed Richards at his quote unquote bachelor party, and it was just dumb. This movie just threw stuff in here just to be cute and funny, and they were trying to add personality to Reed Richards, and that made it worse. And it my God, D plus. And the only reason it doesn't get an F, the absolute only reason why this movie does not get an F, is because there's a movie that we're about to go over that is absolutely hands down worse. And I couldn't give Rise of the Silver Surfer an F and this next film an F, as if they are, in the same wavelength. Rise of the Silver Surfer is Citizen Kane in comparisons to the 2015 Fantastic Four film, or what is known online as Fan Four Stick. It is running a race with Batman and Robin, Madam Web, Kraven the Hunter. I mean, as some of the worst comic book movies of all time. I don't know which one is worse. I'm pointing to this, but I think Madam Web is worse. I think Madam Web might take the title as the worst comic book movie ever made. But that doesn't let this movie off the hook. Fantastic Four was directed by Josh Trank. Super excited by that hiring when they announced it. Josh Trank directed Chronicle, this little found footage superhero film. And, this was during the found footage craze when we got Cloverfield and all of the found footage horror films like Paranormal Activity and Blair Witch Project and stuff like that. So to kind of take that genre and do a superhero film in that format, very interesting, very unique, and a very good film. So, of course, my optimism was through the roof. I'm like, okay, we're getting somewhere. And then there was the talk about this blending in a cinematic universe with the X-Men films. once again got super, super excited about that prospect because we're at this point in 2015, we've gotten the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've gotten the MCU. We see that this can work. We see that a cinematic universe with different characters can actually work on the big screen. And so 20th Century Fox, you own the rights to Fantastic Four, you own the rights to X-Men, is a no-brainer. Let's blend the two if you can match the tone, because you couldn't do that with the Tim Story Fantastic Four films and bring those films into the X-Men universe. Completely different tones would have thrown everything off. But if you're going to make a kind of a darker version of the Fantastic Four, which I wasn't 100% behind, but they expressed that these were based off of the Ultimate Marvel comics, and I didn't really dive into the Ultimate Marvel comics. I dabbled in a couple of them, but I wasn't reading them religiously around that time when they were all released, and so I didn't know the backstory of that comics. You know what the difference between uh the Fantastic Four and the normal canon versus the Ultimate comics. And I know it was different with how they got their powers. It was more of they got it out of a different dimension as opposed to cosmic weight rays in space. So I knew that aspect of it, but that's neither here nor there. And then you have a crop of very young, talented actors who were taking over the roles. Miles Teller as Reed Richards, Michael B. Jordan, which was a controversial move at the time. I think it's still controversial to this day. He was cast as not Reed Richards, as Johnny Storm, and he worked with Josh Trank on Chronicle. Kate Mara as Sue Storm, and then you have Jamie Bell as Ben Grimm. I'm like, okay. And then you have Toby Kebbell as Doctor Doom. Toby Kebbell, I think, is a really good actor who just, I don't know, man, he just gets wrapped up in the wrong projects, aside from Planet of the Apes. But he was he was in motion capture there. But whenever he's in a live action role, he just cannot break through. But he is phenomenal. I love Toby Kebbell. But he was cast as Doctor Doom, and I'm thinking, okay, cool. So they start filming the film, and I followed the production of this film very closely. I wasn't on set or anything like that, but they filmed this movie 10 miles away from my house. They filmed it in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, right around the corner, you should say, from me. And so I followed the production very closely because I was excited for this movie. I'm like, okay, we're getting a different version, a reboot to the Fantastic Four. I heard nothing but horrible things. I didn't hear not one good thing coming out of the production of this film. And that's not beyond the norm. You know, a lot of movies go through tough productions and the end product comes out all right. You know, some turn out great. You would never know that it was a horrible experience to make movies, but it came out all right. But that's what I was hoping here, and God help us here. This film, it follows them. They're teenagers now. They're not adults. They're teenagers, and they build this interdimensional portal doodad, and it calls them to gain their powers. All right, you sit down and watch it. Once again, a movie that I said I would never watch again, but I rewatched it with my daughter. She didn't want to watch it. I kind of forced her to because I wanted her to experience it for herself, because she watched like the first 30 minutes of it or something like that, and I forced her to finish it, and yeah, she felt the same way that all of us did after watching this movie. But I I remember being in a theater. I went with my friend, another friend of mine, childhood friend of mine. He loves movies just as much as I do, and he's the type, he loves every movie that he goes see. I mean, I don't care what it is. I remember we got in an argument one time about a film. Uh, I wish I knew which movie it was, but I told him I ain't too much care for it. And he was like, "How you didn't like it? It's a movie. How you love movies? You don't love movies because there's no way you. All movies are good and all this. It was some stupid argument he was making. I can't remember. It was years ago. And I'm like, man, what is you talking about? You can't have that attitude going into a movie that every movie is great because every movie isn't great. That's like eating pizza. Every pizza isn't great. You know, there's Domino's, there's Pizza Hut, there's Papa John's, there's many other pizza places, and everyone is different. And it's the same thing with a movie. You know, everyone is different. It, what works for you may not work for me. It's all subjective. But anywho's, we went to see this movie together, opening night. And the cat was out the bag at this point. You know, they didn't do any press screenings, no test screen, nothing. Nothing. And so you kind of knew that this was bad. Whenever the studio doesn't give you early screenings or nothing like that for a film, that's usually a sign that the movie's bad. And so they didn't do any for this movie. I'm still being optimistic, Kevin. I'm like, okay, maybe they don't want spoilers to get out. Maybe some of the X-Men pop up in it. They don't want to spoil it. So I'm being optimistic. Then the night before the movie came out, Josh Trank, the director of this film, he also co-wrote this film as well. He sends out a tweet bashing the movie, going off on the film. This isn't the movie I directed. This was butchered by the studio and the reshoots and all this here. And I had nothing to do with it. I denounced the movie and all this here. Even then, stupid me, like, oh, they probably made the movie better. He probably didn't know what he was doing. Because this was his first big movie. Chronicle was a small movie in the sense of a studio film like this. And so I'm still optimistic because I'm holding on to hope. Plus, I had enjoyed the trailer. The trailer sold me. So I'm amped up. I got my ticket. Me and my boy, we go in here, sit down in the theater. Movie starts. And we're off and running. First hour of this movie, I kid you not. I wish I could call him up and put him on air. I wish I could call him up so I could prove to you I'm not lying. We're sitting down an hour into this movie, and we both leaned over simultaneously and said, I don't see where people are tripping about. He was like, I don't know either. This is pretty good. And like I said earlier, I don't talk in movies. We don't talk in movies. I'm all in, but I had to express that because I'm like, where is all this vitriol coming from? So far, I'm engaged in this story. This actually is good. And it's like I jinxed it because maybe 5-10 minutes later, one of the most horrendous things happened that I can't get burrowed out of my head. You see this title card come up on screen. 1 year later. From that point on, this became the most depressing, surreal experience I've ever had in a movie theater. I've walked out of one movie in my entire life, and that was Torque. This movie that came out it was early 2000s about I don't even want to talk about it. Anyway, I walked out of that movie because it was that bad. And the sad part is I walked out at the end. I should have walked out an hour earlier, but I waited to the end. I mean, at the very end to walk out. But anyways, and I still got my money back. I ain't got my money back for that movie. I almost walked out of this movie. And you know why I didn't walk out of this movie? Was the simple fact I was sitting there with my boy. And I know how he feels about movies. I know that he feels every movie is great. Every movie deserves to be nominated for an Academy Award and blah, blah, blah. And so I didn't want to anger him, make him mad, and ruin his experience. And so I sat there and stomached the rest of this movie. I can't believe that not only this movie got made, that they actually released it. this movie was the worst movie I ever saw in my life. We walked out of the film. The movie, well, didn't walk out of it, but the movie was over. We were leaving. I was quiet, and we got into the parking lot because I don't like talking in front of the theater because people may be walking in and we may be talking about the end of the movie, and I don't want to spoil it for nobody. So we walked into the parking lot, and he asked me, and I could tell it was just his tone. I could tell. He was like, "Well, what do you think? What do you thought?" Even though I knew by his tone, I wasn't 100% certain. So I like, well, it's, and before I can get it out, he like, he was like, that movie sucked. And I said, thank you, Jesus. I said, bro, this was the worst movie I ever saw in my life. And he was like, bro, I wanted to leave. And I was like, I wanted to leave. The only reason I didn't leave was because of you. And he was like, man, that's the reason I didn't leave. So we pretty much killed each other there. But it was so bad. This movie was so incoherent. This movie had nothing there was no characters to get behind. Not one of the not one of these characters could you cheer for. Nobody grabbed you. Nobody was sympathetic. The only person I was sympathetic for was everybody sitting in the theater who paid their money. That includes me. It was horrible. Horrible. And I can't understand. This is one of the most mind-boggling movies you would ever watch. Because like I said, the first few minutes of this movie was actually good. Borderline great setup. I mean, everything was set up great. And then you had that title card 1 year later. And everything after that was a dumpster fire. And I'm left scratching my head wondering, how did this movie manage to go from good to downright horrible in literally 5 seconds? And it wasn't a gradual drop. It wasn't, okay, the 1 year later tag, and then it just started to get bad, boring, and disinteresting and stuff like that. No, it hit the floor as soon as that title card was off the screen, and it never got back up. At no point. Michael B. Jordan as the Human Torch, worst casting in history. And this is, I made this statement when I reviewed Sinners that I was not a Michael B. Jordan fan. I never really liked him as an actor. Not that he's a bad actor, but I feel he plays the same character in every movie, with the exception of Killmonger from Black Panther. Loved his character there. Thought he did excellent. Thought he was excellent in Sinners. Made me turn around. Maybe when he works with Ryan Coogler, that's the only way I can accept him. But outside of Ryan Coogler directing him, I have not enjoyed Michael B. Jordan. This was the worst casting decision ever. I'm all for, sticking it to the man, bucking the system. Yeah, let's make a black Johnny Cage. Johnny Cage. This isn't Mortal Kombat. Black Johnny Storm. Yeah, I'm all for that, but I did not like his portrayal of Johnny Storm. Now, just like Chris Evans redeemed himself as being Captain America, Michael B. Jordan redeemed himself being Killmonger. So it's not the end of the world to be the Human Torch. So Jonathan Quinn, you all right, bro? We good. There's still hope for you. But horribly miscast. Miles Teller, another actor who I deeply enjoy in most of everything he's in. Whiplash is one of my favorite movies. I thought he would fit the character perfectly, and do some justice to the Reed Richards character. Nope. It was a portion there where you can tell he was trying. Actually, to be honest with you, all of them. You can tell throughout this film that they all were trying at one point, and you can pinpoint the moments where they all just gave up. It is the oddest thing. This movie should be studied. It is not. It is not for entertainment purposes. This is for educational purposes. You need to watch this movie and just to view how a movie can derail into. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. You can literally pinpoint the scenes where the actors just said, "F it." They just said, "Forget it," and it was over from there. Uh, Kate Mara, she didn't want to be there at all. Jamie Bell as Ben Grimm, that's the one character that, even though all the characters were done a disservice, Ben Grimm was done dirty in this movie. I mean, Jamie Bell, I felt so bad for him. That's the one person throughout this entire film that I actually felt bad for being a part of this film. Because number one, he wasn't in it long as far as Jamie Bell, as Ben Grimm. He wasn't in it long, to see him physically. Then the Thing, okay, it was good to finally see the Thing digitally made. He did look like a rock thing. Didn't like the design of him, but all right, they swung for the fences there. They were trying to go for this realistic look. That did Jesus. It was just bad. Poor Tim Blake Nelson. He needs to leave comic book movies alone. He was done dirty in Captain America: A Brave New World, where he played the leader. I thought he was done dirty in that film after giving a pretty good performance as the leader in the Incredible Hulk film. Was done dirty there. And then in this film, he was done dirty again because his character was supposed to be Mold Man, but they changed it in post. And so it wasn't like they rewrote it on the day, on the set, or anything like that. No, it was changed in the editing room. And so when he goes see the film, he's thinking he's some one particular character and he's somebody else in the finished product. Unbelievable. The plot of this movie, what plot? It was no plot. There was nothing there. Absolutely nothing there. I've seen this movie 3 times and I still don't know what's the point of this movie. I have no earthly idea. The character of Dr. Doom, played by Toby Kebbell, the most mind-boggling thing that they did to that character. Number one, they gave him superpower. They gave him telepathy, which is something, or telekinesis, whichever one. I think telekinesis. And that character doesn't have that in the comics. Maybe he have it in the Ultimate Marvel comics, but not the ones that I've read. But they gave him this superpower where he's basically a scanner. He'll blow your head off your shoulders, man, just by looking at you. And I'm like, okay, it's cool and all, but when he goes up against the Fantastic Four, he never uses it. Not one time. And I mean, it's instant. It's like, as soon as you look, he like, boom. And he's fighting and struggling with the Fantastic Four at the end of this movie. I'm like, use your scanner powers. That solves the problem right there. It's just dumb. Speaking of that final battle, what were the stakes? What were the stakes? You didn't get a sense of what this world, this planet was about to go through. Even though Dr. Doom was about to destroy the Earth, I think. I don't know. Still don't know. You see a beam come down and some of the planet gets sucked up, and you see a few people running in this remote location. I don't know what. This movie is horrible. This is arguably the worst movie, not just comic book movie, but movie ever made. You can put it in the not top 10, but bottom 10. It is horribly made, horribly placed. There's no plot. There's no substance. The acting is bad. this movie made the previous two Fantastic Four films look like golden gods, bro. This is that bad of a movie. Fantastic Four from 2015 gets a letter grade of a fantastic F. This is horrible. Horrible. This is horrible. I'm so glad that I rewatched it. The reason I'm so glad I rewatched it is because I knew I was going to do this show. And I wanted to get it fresh in my mind and whatnot. And now I know I will never have to go back and watch this movie ever again in my life. And I'm so grateful for it. God is good all the time. But anyways, yes, that movie gets a solid, I mean, sexy F. It don't even make sense to talk about the money it made, because it made none. It bombed miserably at the box office. Now, we did get references to not in a reference. We actually got a Reed Richards in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness in 2022, I think it was. And John Krasinski, fan casting. Everybody wanted him to be cast as Reed Richards. Well, ultimately that didn't happen in the canon of the MCU, but this was kind of a fan servicey thing to put him in this film as Reed Richards in the alternate universe of Doctor Strange, when he was bouncing through universes. I don't know. That movie was that movie. But it was good to see him in the role, even though he wasn't very smart to say he was a genius to go up against the Scarlet Witch. But it is what it is. And then we got Johnny Storm returned in Deadpool and Wolverine just last year, portrayed once again by Chris Evans. And that was a cool callback to see Chris Evans put on the Fantastic Four suit one last time. And we did get a reference at the end of Thunderbolts, or spoilers, the New Avengers, when that post-credit scene with the Fantastic Four ship looks like it's arriving at Earth, and that sets up the Fantastic Four First Steps, which comes out July the 25th. I am excited to see this movie for a number of reasons. Like I said earlier, the trailer alone is better than all three of these movies combined. So that gives me hope, and it's a low bar to clear here, as you can tell. This movie does not have to be great. It does not have to blow my socks off, but it has to be at least average. And from what I've seen and the talents involved with this project, and being as though this is the official Marvel swing at the Fantastic Four, because Marvel didn't really produce those movies. That was 20th Century Fox. So this is Marvel Studios' first go with the Fantastic Four. That gives me a lot of hope. So we shall see. We shall see. But I would like to know, are you excited for this Fantastic Four film? Are you looking forward to seeing Galactus for the first time, even though this is his second time on the big screen? And are you one of the ones who they feel burnt? You felt like, look, I went to go see those other ones, and I'm not giving this one a chance. And I can understand that, but I would love to know your thoughts moving forward. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to movie goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me as we discuss the 20th Century Fox Fantastic Four films. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, You all be blessed.